Hello everyone, I'm Siddharthan. In this video, let's build a translator application using Streamlit where we will be using OpenAI's GPT-4o model for translation. So this model supports more than 50 languages and the user can select an input and output language of their choice and do the translation. So this is how our end translator application will look like. So this is the Streamlit user interface that we will build. So the user will select an input language and the output language of their choice. So let's say that we have input as English and the output language is French, and here we can type in some text saying like, let's say hello world. So once we have done that, so we can click this translate button and this will translate the text and give it here. Okay, so we can also take like a longer text and copy this, paste it over here and click the translate button. So we would see this output here, and the response is also pretty fast. So here we are calling the OpenAI API to access the GPT-4o model. So this is what we are going to build. Okay, so this is the end result of what we are going to do. And now let's get started with the development process. So I have my PyCharm ready. So here I've created a project with Python 3.10, but you can try it with the later versions of the Python as well. So here I have this .venv. This is my virtual environment directory where all the libraries will be installed. So I'm going to create like a more standard code structure. So in this project directory, I'm going to create a folder. So right click in this project directory and create a directory. So I'm going to name this as src, which stands for source code. And I've already made a video on how you can create these environments in PyCharm and so on. So if you're not familiar with that, you can check that out. And I'm going to create another file within this project directory and name this as requirements.txt, where I'm going to add all the libraries that I want. Okay. And within this src, I'm going to create three other things. So first is the main.py file. So this file contains the code for our Streamlit application. And then let's create another Python file and name this as translator utils. Translator underscore utils. So in this Python file, I'm going to build the code that will call the OpenAI API and get the response. So you can add this in the main.py file, but by doing this, you would have like a more modular code. So the user interface code is in one Python file, and the the code that calls the API and other backend stuff is in another Python file. So that's why we are doing this. And finally, we need this config.json file. So I'll create a file and call this as config.json, where we are going to store our OpenAI API key. So these are the three files that we need. So in the first step, let's open the requirements.txt. So see that in the project directory, we have src and requirements, and within src, we have all these code cells. So in this requirements.txt, first I'll mention the libraries that I want. So first let's mention Streamlit, and then let's have LangChain, and then LangChain OpenAI to access the GPT-4o model. Okay, so these are the three libraries that I need, and I'll mention the latest library version that I have like while making this particular video. So for Streamlit, it's 1.35.0, and for LangChain, it's 0.2.1, and LangChain OpenAI, it's 0.1.7. So these are the versions that I need. So I'll save this. And then I'll open my terminal and run this pip install. So I'll say pip install -r requirements.txt. So this pip install -r requirements.txt. So this command looks into this requirements.txt file and installs all the libraries with the specified version. So that's what this command will do. And let's run this. As you can see, so the libraries are getting installed. So we have this Streamlit, LangChain, and LangChain OpenAI, and all the other dependent libraries for these three libraries will be installed. So the next thing that we can do is get the API key. So how this would work is we would have this user interface built in Streamlit. So the user selects this and type in some text. So all these are done in Streamlit. So after that, once they click this translate, we are going to invoke the OpenAI API. So for that, we need the API key. So in order to get that, you can go to the openai.com. So I'll search openai.com, and here you have this products, right? So within this product, go to this API login. So this will ask you to log in to your account if you have not like logged in. So I've already logged into my account, and the thing about this GPT-4o model is that if you don't have a payment method, then it won't be like applicable to you. So if you can, you can add your card details and sign up here. If not, you can just try it with the other models for now. Let's say GPT 3.5, where they give this standard $5 credit per month. So you can go with that instead of adding any payment method. So if you want to try GPT 4 and 4.40, so for me, it kind of requested me to add this payment method. So that's something you can think about. So in this OpenAI thing, so we have this chat GPT and API. So I'm going to go into this API, and in the left navigation bar, we have this API key. So here we can create a new API key. So I'll delete the API key that I already had, and I'll create a new one. So I'll give this create new secret key, and I'll name this translator application. And this is the default project. So if you have other projects created, you can mention that, and I'll create the secret key. So this will display the secret key that I've generated. So I've copied it, and now let's come back to our code. So as you can see, the libraries are also installed. So now I'll open this config.json, and I'm going to create a key value pair. So the key would be OpenAI API key, and the value for this would be the API key that we have generated. So save this. As you can see, this is just like a dictionary, a JSON object. So we have this OpenAI API key and the key that we have generated. Okay. So now I'll close this and close the requirements.txt as well. Let's clear this, and now let's get started with building the Streamlit code. First, let's import the libraries that we need. So I'll import Streamlit as ST. Now let's set the page configuration. So I'll say st.pageconfig, and here we are going to mention some parameters like page title. So page title, let's name this as translator.ai. So you can give any name. So I'll just go with translator.ai. And the next parameter that we need to set is page icon. So page icon, we can like copy some emojis from Emojipedia. So I have this Japanese symbol. So I'll just copy this Japanese symbol and put it over here. Again, you can choose any symbol of your choice. And then we have to set the layout. So layout is equal to center. So there are like two options that you can give for this layout. So one is centered and the other one is white. So when you give the center, all the content that you see in the Streamlit application will be mainly focused in this like center part. As you can see, if it's white, like it occupies like more space in the sides. So that's about this layout thing. So these are the page configuration. So this page title of Translator AI, page icon of this emoji are like what you are seeing here. So the emoji and the translator.ai in this previous version that I'm showing you. So the next step is like setting the page title. So this part would be Streamlit page title. So st.title, and we can name this like with the same symbol. We can name this as translator application or translator app GPT-4o. So again, you can give any name of your choice. So the next thing that we are going to set is set this input language and this drop down in the left side, and the output language and drop down on the right side. So for this we can use streamlit.columns. So I'm going to create two columns as I need only the left and right part. So if you need three columns, if you want to put something in the middle, you can create three columns as well. So I'll say column 1 and column 2 is equal to st.columns, and within the parenthesis mention the number of columns that you're creating, the number of variables that you add. So now I can say with column 1. So when I put this with column 1, all the thing that I'm building here will be represented in this left side, and with column 2 will have everything on the right side. So first we need to create a list that holds the list of languages that we are seeing here. So for now, let's just take like a few examples or like few languages, but later when you're working on, you can increase the number of languages that you have, or you can also get it through some APIs or some Python libraries. So that's also possible. So here I'll create a list and call this as input languages list, and let's say this input languages list as languages like English. So this is something the user is going to select, and let's say we have this French, German, Latin, so the GPT model also supports like Indian languages as well. So you can choose something like that as well if your like target audience is from India or something. So we have, let's say, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, or like other regional languages as well. So I'll choose like a few of these. And finally, maybe let's have Marathi. Okay, so you can, as I said, you can add like more languages as well. So the next thing is we have to create a drop down and pass this list to the drop down. So the user is going to see the list that we are seeing over here. So that will be the next step. So here I'll say input language. So this is the variable that will hold the language that the user has selected. So this input language is equal to st.select box. And here let's say label. So label is equal to input language. So this is what we are going to mention in this top as input language. So input language, and in options parameter we have to pass the list that we have created, input languages list. Next thing is with column 2 I'm going to create another list. So I'll call this as output languages list. So for this output languages list, I'll say I'll create a list, and for X in input languages list, okay, so for X in input languages list, if X is not equal to input language. So let's understand what this does. So in this code, right, so we have this input language as English and the output language as French. When the user selects French, the output language shouldn't be French, so it should change, right? So if they have, let's say, selected German, so German shouldn't be present in the output language, as you can see. So the original order is English, French, German. So if German is selected here, so German should disappear from here. If, let's say, French is selected from here, then German will appear and French will be removed from this. So we have to implement this. So for that, what I'm doing is I'm going to create a list from this input languages list and take everything that is like, except this input language, I'm going to choose everything. So when the user is selecting French, we will take this original list of this input list and delete that French alone. If the user is selecting this Latin, we will take this original list and remove Latin alone. So that's what we are doing here. So when I say for X in input languages list, if X is not equal to input language, so this is basically a if condition and for loop. So using this, we are creating a list. This just like takes the input languages list, takes all the elements except for the element that is the input language. So as I said, if French is selected, French will be removed. If, let's say, Hindi is selected, Hindi will be removed in the output language. So it's for that purpose. And now we can just do the same thing of output language, so like similar way that we have done over here. So here I'll say output language is equal to same st.select box. So in this label, instead of this input, we can say output language, and options can be output languages list. So what we have created over here. So let's name this output languages list. So the next thing that we need to create is a text box for the user to type in some text. So here, so I'll come out of this with column 1 and column 2. So that means I'm coming out of this left and right column. So it's going to now present in like in the entire layout of my application. So I've came out of this column 1 and column 2 and say input text. So this is where the user is going to give you the input text. So the input text is equal to st.text area, and so within this we can say type the text to be translated. Okay, so this is the label that we are seeing over here. So this is like pretty much the layout kind of thing that we are creating. So we have this column 1 and column 2 layout where we have this input language and output language, and we have created a text box where the user can type in some text. So now we have to create this translate button. So once the user has click this translate button, we have to invoke the API. So that step of invoking the API, let's do in a different file which we have created as translator utils, right? So I'll come back to the code. I'll open my project directory, go to the src folder and open this translator utils. So this is where we will be having the code. So first I'll import OS and I'll import JSON, and from LangChain OpenAI import chat OpenAI. So this is to load the LLM, which is GPT-4o in this case. And from LangChain underscore core dot prompts, I'm going to import chat template. So chat prompt template. Okay. So now let's understand the purpose of this. So first we have this OS in order to direct, the thing to the particular directory, and JSON in order to read the config.json file that we have over here that has the API key, and then chat OpenAI in order to load the LLM GPT-4o, and then chat prompt template to set a template saying that it's going to work as a translator. So those are the required dependencies. So now we have to configure our, language, this LangChain library with the OpenAI key. So this is to configure OpenAI API key. So for this, I'll say working directory is equal to os.path.dir name, os.path.absolute path, and here I'm going to say file. So this is a very key thing, and I'll explain you what's the purpose of this in a minute. So here I'll say config data. So here I'm going to load my configuration file. So it's json.load open, and within this we have to pass the path. So path, I'll say f quotes working directory and config.json. Okay, so let's understand this code. So the translator utils and the config.json file are in the same directory. So it should work if we just say config.json. But when you run this on a Streamlit application, right? So what it's going to do is, so the application will basically run from the place where you have installed Python. So this will in more cases be like, let's say you have this users in your system, and in my PC it would be like users sid, and within that Python will be installed. So that's the location on which this particular Streamlit application will run. So that will be the working directory. So now we have to point it to the config.json, which is in a different directory when it runs in a Streamlit application. So I'm going to say, or instead of copying this like entire path, so I can do this. I can copy this absolute path and paste it over here where I'm mentioning this path. So it's like the entire path of this config.json file. So if I share this code with someone else, right? So then they have to change this particular line of code with their directory where they have saved this config.json. So in order to avoid that, we are using this particular piece of code which is going to get the path of the file. So when I say this file, it's going to get the path of this translator underscore utils.py file. So this is what happens here. So we pass this special parameter called as file, which will mention this translator utils file. So wherever this file is located, right? So it will take that directory and pass that to this variable called as working directory. So now we can attach this config.json file to this working directory, which will be the exact path that we are seeing over here. Okay, so this is how this happens. So instead of mentioning this directly, so we are saying that get this directory from your current file and then add it to the config.json file. So when you do this json.load open, so this will read the config.json file that we have and convert it to a dictionary and store it in the variable called as config underscore data. So now from this dictionary that we have created of OpenAI API key and this value, so we are going to extract this API key and store it in the environment variable. So that's the next step, and that's why we have imported the OS library. So here I'm going to say OpenAI underscore API key is equal to config data. So the key is the same name. Okay, so that we have over here in this config file. So I'll copy this key and let's paste it over here. So as you can see, OpenAI API key. So now this key is stored in this variable called as OpenAI API key. Now we are going to store that in our environment variables. So I'll say os.environ, and in the square brackets I'm going to create a environment variable and call this as OpenAI API key. So this name shouldn't change. So this OpenAI API key with all the uppercase letters, this shouldn't change. You can name this anything you want, or you can even name this variable anything you want, as well as like the key that you have over here. But when you're storing this in your environment variable, this should be the exact name. This is because when you load the LLM model from the LangChain, it will look for this particular key in your environment variable. So this shouldn't change. And now I'm going to pass the API key that we have retrieved here, which is stored in this particular variable. So I'll paste it over here. So now this does the configuration. So first we are getting the working directory of this file, attaching it to this path of config.json, reading the JSON to a dictionary, storing it here, and then passing the key to this variable called as OpenAI API key and storing that in the environment variable of OpenAI API key. So now let's load the model. So I'll say LLM. So let's call this model LLM, and LLM is equal to chat OpenAI, which we have imported over here. And here I'll say the model that we are going to use is GPT-4o. So GPT-4o. So if you want to use GPT 3.5 Turbo, you can use that as well. So GPT-4o, and temperature is equal to 0. So when the temperature value is closer to 0, it's going to give you less random output. If it's like closer to 1, if it's a large number, right? So this value ranges from 0 to 1. So if it's closer to 1, then it's going to give like different response, or like kind of different response each time you ask a particular question. So you can also explore like the other parameters that you have for this. So that is the next step. So now we are going to create a function that can get the input language, output language that the user has kind of given, as you can see here. So the user will give an input language, output language, and the text, right? So we are going to pass that to a function here. So here I'll create a function and name this as translate. So define translate, and the first parameter will be input language, second parameter will be output language, and next will be the input text, the exact text that they are typing in. So input text. So when we call this function, we are kind of creating this prompt template. So this prompt is equal to chat prompt template, which we have imported, and dot from messages. So this we have already seen in the previous video of how we can access the GPT-4o model from LangChain. So there I've explained to you about this chat prompt templates. So from messages, open this parenthesis and then create a list, and within that list we have to create a maybe a tuple. So here let's say system. So system is like kind of setting the context for the LLM. So here I'm going to say you are a helpful assistant that translates input language. So put this input language within curly braces because we have to replace it later, to output language. But make sure that you don't have this if. So this kind of formatting shouldn't happen here. So you are a helpful assistant that translate input language to output language. Okay, let's just put a dot over here. So this system message basically sets up the context, as I said. So here you can have like different context, like you are a helpful assistant that completes the chat or answer your question or something like that. So here the context is just building a translator. So I'm asking it to be an assistant that translates one language to another. So next I'll do this. Next will be the human message. Human, and here put another curly braces and put your input. So here we are going to pass our input text. So this input is nothing but the input text that we are going to pass in later. So this is our prompt templates. Now I'll create a chain. So this is what we have seen in the previous video, chaining the prompt with the LLM. So I'll say prompt and use a vertical bar and say LLM. Okay. So now I'll say response is equal to chain.invoke, and then we have to pass in a dictionary. So in this dictionary I'm going to say input language will be input language. Next is output language. So that will be my output language as well. And finally the input text. So this input that we have mentioned over here. So the input is going to be input text. Let's understand this. So here we have set a template, right? So you are a helpful assistant that translates input language to output language. So we use this chat prompt templates and store this prompt. Now we are chaining this LLM and creating this variable called as chain. So this is the chain that we are creating, and in the response I'm invoking this. So while invoking this, it will invoke the LLM and it will replace these factors, the input language, output language, and input, whatever is present in the curly braces. So that will replace those values with the dictionary that we have given here. So the input language will be replaced by this variable, which is the input language that the user is selecting, and the output language will be replaced by this parameter. Again, the output language the user is selecting, and the text given by the user is replaced here. So this, let's say if it's English to French, so this will be replaced with English, this will be replaced with French, and let's say the text is hello world, so this input will be replaced with hello world. So this is the dictionary that we are passing. So that is all. So this chain dot invoke with this dictionary will give you the response of converting one language to another for that text. And you can say response.text, response.content. So in this response.content only the final output will be kind of stored in this AI message. So here we are setting up the context for the LLM, saying that this is the system, how the system has to perform or how it should behave, and then the human message, the text itself, and then we are storing it in this response. And now we can return this response.content. Okay, so that is all. So I'll copy and paste it over here. So now we have to call this function translate from this translator utils in our Streamlit app. So here I'm going to say, after a Streamlit, let's import from translator utils. As you can see here, import translate. So this is the function that we are importing, and after the user has given the input text, right, so we have to create a button as we have discussed earlier. So here I'll say if st.button, and let's name this button as translate. Let's create a variable as translated text. Okay, so the translated text will be translate, the function that we have imported over here, and within that pass the input language, output language, and the text that the user has given. So the three parameters it's going to need. So I'll just copy this because all these are like the same names that we have in the Streamlit app as well. So I'll copy and paste it over here. So we have to pass input text, output text, as well as the input language, output language, and the input text. Okay, I have to name this as output language, not input language, this one. So this is stored here. So how this would work is, and finally we can use this st.success, which will display a green text box where the output will be displayed. So let's put this translated text over here. Okay, so we have this, let's understand the code. So first we are setting up the page configuration, Streamlit app titles, and the left should be column 1 where we are displaying the input languages. Output languages should display all the languages except the one the user has selected. So that's the second column, and then the input text box where the user is going to type in something. And finally we have this translate button that will call this function, which is in turn invoking this API with this chat prompt templates and all those values and so on. And finally it's returning the result that is stored in this translated text, which will be displayed using this st.success. So now let's run this. So I'll open the other project that I have, that I was showing you the demo. So I'll close this and close this web page as well. Now let's run this app that we have created right now. So I'll open the terminal. So in order to run this, you have to say streamlit run src/main.py. So pay attention to the directory. So now this is in the Translator App project directory. So my main.py file is my Streamlit app. So I have to say streamlit run src, which is the folder dot /main.py. Or instead, what you can do is you can go to that particular directory, cd space src, and then you can just say streamlit run you can do something like this: Streamlit run main.py. So this is also something that you can do. So that's like of your choice. So pay attention to the directory. In order to come back, you can do cd double dot. Okay, I'll clear this and say Streamlit run src slash main.py. So this will open my Streamlit app. So here you can see this translator.ai and the emojis, the center layout. And here, let's say we choose English and the output language to be French and say hello world and translate. Let's make sure if it's working. So it's okay. So the temperature spelling is wrong. So I'll come back here and TU. Okay. So let's stop this application and rerun this. So you can try with other languages as well. So now we are seeing the output. So similarly, I'll just go and copy some other text from this thing. So preparing food or something. So you can like copy some text, paste it over here, and ask the model to give a response. So I mean, don't know French, but if someone knows, they can probably validate. So you can also choose like some other languages as well. So probably like I'll choose Tamil because I know it. So I can do this translate and check if the output is proper and so on. So this is how you can build this simple translator application with this thing of uh, GPT-4o API and the Streamlit user interface. Let's just do a quick recap. So the first thing that you need is like all the requirements.txt, the libraries that we need, which is Streamlit, LangChain, and LangChain OpenAI, and the OpenAI API key, which is like really important. And then we are building the Streamlit user interface with all the layouts, page titles, and the layout of left and right of input and output languages. As I said, you can like include more languages to this as well, so that like it's kind of broader. So the user selects the input language and the output language and the text area, and they click the button to get the output from the response. And this translator utils, we have created a function called as translate that will take in the input parameters as input language, output language, and input text and do this translation. Okay, so the next step that you can do is probably deploy this in a Streamlit cloud and give it out for public use. Like some other people can test it out. And the other option that you can do is like, if you don't want your API key to be used, you can just have like another field here where the user can paste in their API key. So our code is going to use their API key to get the response. So you can try that as well. But for now, we are just like giving that here as well. So this is how it works. So I hope everyone is clear until this point, and please try this out and it will be like really interesting, and you can build a lot of things on top of this as well. So let's see in the next upload. Thanks for watching.